All right, so welcome. If you're joining us online later, we're going to talk about chapter 11. This is the axial muscles. You guys will have a quiz on all of the muscles found in your Lab 3 exam study guide on Thursday, and I'll open up that quiz at 8 p.m. after we do another live lecture on chapter 12, the appendicular muscles. So your axial muscles include all of the area of the axial part of the body, so your head, neck, and trunk region. So we'll look at muscles of your head and neck, the vertebral column, muscles of respiration, and the muscles of your abdominal wall. If you guys remember, we have over 700 muscles, and you won't be expected to learn all of them. So the axial muscles are called axial because they have both their attachments on parts of their axial skeleton. And we talked about what an origin and insertion was. That's the part that's more distal and more proximal of the muscle itself. Functions of your axial skeleton, they support your head, your spinal column. You have many muscles in your face to help with facial expression, chewing and swallowing. You have a lot of muscles in your neck. Many muscles associated with breathing, not just your diaphragm, but other muscles. And then other muscles that help support and protect your abdomen and other pelvic organs. So we'll group these muscles and we'll work through the groups from your head and neck region down to your vertebral column, through respiration, and then the pelvic floor. So that's kind of where we're going with this. And again, shout out any questions as you have them. So the muscles in bold on this picture show the muscles of the axial skeleton. I know this is a really small picture to look at. So if you guys have an atlas or even Google Images to help your studying purposes for the lab exam, I uploaded a muscle PowerPoint for under lab PowerPoints. It doesn't have all the muscles on it, but it has some of them. But you can see here all the muscles that are bolded, especially the ones in your head and neck. A lot of the muscle names tell you what shape they are or where they're located. So the muscle that surrounds your mouth is the orbicularis oris, and that's a circular muscle. Then you have an orbicularis oculi that surrounds your eyes. So that's a circular muscle around your eyes. So we'll go through some of these muscles more in detail too. And this PowerPoint might also help you label some of your lab pages. So again, muscles that are in bold are axial muscles. So these include a lot of the muscles that help maintain your posture in your back, muscles that are connected to the base of your skull in your neck, and then other muscles in your spine. The little teeny tiny muscles between your vertebrae are also considered axial muscles. All right, so muscles in the head and neck are separated into several groups by location and function. And these muscles are interesting because most of them attach to your skull or your hyoid bone. Remember, your hyoid bone is a C-shaped bone. It just kind of floats around your larynx, and it's not attached to anything or attached to other bones. It's just attached to other muscles and ligaments. So muscles of facial expression attached to the superficial fascia or to skull bones. And since fascia is connected to the skin, contractions of these muscles will move your skin to give us all of our facial expressions. And as you guys know, we all have very different facial expressions. Most of them are innervated by the cranial nerve 7, which is the facial nerve. So these are some of your facial muscles. The frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis muscle is the muscle on your forehead. Sometimes you'll see it just labeled frontalis. Then we have orbicularis oculi around your eyes, orbicularis oris around your mouth. We have zygomaticus muscles that attach to your zygomatic bone, your cheekbone. So they will attach from your zygomatic bone down to your lips to help with turning your face up to smile. The risorius muscle attaches also to the side of your lips. That's sometimes called the smile muscle, the risorius muscle. If you see a depressor anguli, anything that says depressor on it, that would cause you to frown or move your lips down. So a lot of muscles in facial expression. And eventually we'll start going through some of your notes too, I promise. From the side of your head, we see the temporalis muscle lies right over where your temporal bone would be. The masseter muscle is a big chewing muscle that would lie kind of where your mandible is. So that's your masseter. What else? Just looking at this picture, I'm going to go back one slide. Which muscle causes you to blink? That's number 2 on your notes. What do you think? Just looking at this picture. The one that surrounds your eyes.
Locator? What's it? I can't really read it.
It's probably hard to see. Okay, the orbicularis oculi. Sorry if you guys can't read that. I think it'll come up later too. The orbicularis oculi causes your muscles to blink. The answer to number 2. You guys can see that. Yeah, definitely not as good as being in person. Let's keep going here. I'm trying to focus on other muscles that are in your lab handout. In your lab exam handout too, it lists the muscle, the action, and the origin and insertion. I'm just going to have you guys learn the muscles and then their actions, just kind of a simplified version of their actions. You don't need to necessarily know every single action of every muscle, but knowing a little bit about what they do. Let's keep moving here. These are more muscles of facial expression. If we look down here, these are ones associated with your mouth. So a lot of their actions will be compressing their cheeks, causing you to frown, causing you to smile. The orbicularis oris would cause you to blow a kiss to someone. Zygomaticus muscles are smiling muscles, and the risorius muscle, the prefix risor means laughter. So risorius is one of your smiling muscles too. Around the eye, so here's where that orbicularis oculi comes in. Orbicularis, orb means circular, so this is the circular muscle around the eye. This closes your eye, causes you to wink, blink, and squint. So we call the orbicularis oculi the blinking muscle, and that's number 2 on your notes. Okay, not all of these muscles I'm going to have you guys know. So in terms of like lecture exam, study guide stuff, just study your notes. But the lab exam, I'll try to pick out the ones that are more important. Questions so far? Okay, so here's a frowning depressor anguli oris. That's the one located down here. That'll go down to your chin. Orbicularis oculi, so this is showing you the muscle and then what its action is. Zygomaticus major, again, this one attaches to your zygomatic bone. You have a major and a minor, so you have 2 of them. And along with the risorius, they cause you to smile. Orbicularis oris causes you to purse your lips as if you're blowing a kiss. And the frontal belly or your occipitofrontalis would cause you to raise your eyebrows and lift them up. Platysma is a long muscle in your neck, and it causes you to tense your neck. All right, so this is where we get to number 1. What are your 6 eye muscles? And I think my next slide lists them all out for you, but you have 6 different muscles that move your eyeball. You have a medial rectus, lateral rectus, inferior rectus, and superior rectus. So those are the rectus muscles. And they are attached to the medial part of your eye, the lateral part of your eyeball, the inferior, the bottom part of your eyeball, and the superior part of your eyeball. And then you have an inferior and superior oblique muscle that attach the eyeball at an oblique angle. So those are the 6 muscles that move your eye. And here is a picture of them. And then I'll list them in the next slide if you guys want to write those down. So this is a picture of the 6 muscles that move the eye. You can see how they attach to the sides of the eye, the top and bottom. And then your oblique muscles, the inferior oblique and superior oblique, attach the eye at an angle and then kind of come around at a corner to move your eye in an oblique or a diagonal direction. So 6 muscles that move the eye. And here I have them listed for you. if you guys are writing those down on your notes. This is number 1 in your notes.
Professor?
Yep.
In the slide where it shows like the eyeball with all the muscles, is it referring to anatomical position when it says right eye, or is that the literal right eye?
Yes, it's yeah, always in anatomical position. So you can see her like cross section of the lady up there is taken on her right eye in anatomical position.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Hannah?
Yes.
So when we're looking at her lateral rectus of the right eye there. Good question. So I'll put this back one up if you guys are writing down all 6. If you think about it, if your medial rectus muscle is attached to the medial part of your eyeball, if that one contracts or shortens, what would that cause your eyeballs to do? Which direction would they go?
Towards the middle.
Towards the middle, so you guys become cross-eyed. Yep. And then if your lateral rectus muscle contracts or shortens, which way would your eyeballs move?
To the
Outside?
Yeah.
So they would pull on your eye, so your eyes would turn out if your lateral rectus muscle attaches. What about your superior rectus muscle?
you look up.
It's attached to the top of your eye. I wish I had like a circle here, and it would pull your eyeball so you'd look up. And the inferior rectus, when that contracts, it would pull your eye to look down. So the actions of those muscles are pretty easy to tell. And then you can see the actions of your oblique eye muscles. They move the eye inferiorly or superiorly, and then laterally. So some sort of like diagonal direction. Don't worry about actions of your oblique muscles, but you should have a general idea of the actions of your rectus muscles. A question on your next test might be, if you quick look to the left, which eye muscles caused you to do that? Your left eye, your lateral rectus muscle, and your right eye, your medial rectus muscle caused your eyeballs to go that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so number 1 and 2 are good for notes. These are muscles of mastication. So the word mastication means to chew. So these muscles will all move at the TMJ. Does anyone know what that stands for? It's okay if not. The temporomandibular joint. So the place where the mandible connects to your temporal bone, that's a joint. So these muscles will all move at that joint where your mandible connects to your temporal bone. They'll all be innervated by cranial nerve number 5. Your temporalis muscle, remember that was the muscle over your temporal bone. That'll elevate and retract the mandible, so it brings your mandible up and back. Your masseter elevates the mandible, so closes your mouth, and then protracts it, brings it forward. Then you have pterygoid muscles, which also help in chewing. So these are your main mastication muscles or chewing muscles: temporalis, masseter, and then the chat, I can't really, let me hear. Yep, now we can see it. Then we have some lateral and medial pterygoid muscles. They're called pterygoid muscles because they're near the pterygoid processes of your sphenoid bone, if you guys remember those. Can you guys see me in a small screen at all?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so because I'm like doing all these motions, and I just want to make sure that's not a thing. Okay, good. Okay. It won't let me. There we go. Okay, so here are some muscles, their actions, and I'm going to keep going. Muscles that move the tongue. So we have the glossus muscles that move the tongue. Your tongue is extremely important for talking and then also helping you swallow your food and mix your food. So what does that suffix glossus refer to? I'm on number 3 in your notes.
Does it mean the tongue?
The tongue. So glossus just means tongue. So any muscle that would have that suffix glossus in it would refer to some sort of muscle that's attached to the tongue and helps it do that movement. You can see here the hyoid bone and how many of these glossus muscles are actually attached to that hyoid bone. So the glossus refers to your tongue. All right, so those are some glossus muscles. There's specific action on the tongue, but they're all just moving the tongue to help with swallowing and talking. Okay. Muscles in the larynx. Let's see that. That says larynx up there. Or does that say pharynx? Sorry, there's a screen in my way. Pharynx, sorry. So the throat, the pharynx is a tube extending from your oral and nasal cavities. So the pharynx is just another word for your throat that's behind your nose and your mouth. And there's several muscles that, let me get that back, that help with swallowing. And these muscles will contract sequentially to initiate swallowing, kind of like as if you're squeezing a Go-Gurt. Have any of you guys eaten those? Maybe your kids have, I don't know. But these muscles kind of squeeze the larynx that way to help with swallowing. Okay, so these are some pharynx muscles. I'm trying to think, I don't think there's many of these on your lab exam list. And I don't think I ask you too much about this in your notes. So I'm going to keep moving from here. Here's more muscles. You can kind of see them, how they surround the pharynx or your throat, which is the tube in the back of your nose and mouth, and how it'll go down eventually and separate into the esophagus or the trachea, which will take air down. So these are just muscles that help kind of squeeze the food down so it goes back through your esophagus. Okay, muscles of the head and neck, is that what it says there? The anterior neck, sorry. The anterior neck muscles are divided on their location with respect to your hyoid bone, so they're either superior to the hyoid or inferior to the hyoid. So suprahyoid muscles and infrahyoid muscles. There might be a couple of these muscles on your lab exam list. They'll all have the suffix hyoid in them, so you'll know that they'll attach to your hyoid, and they'll be suprahyoid above the hyoid bone or below the hyoid bone. For lecture, I don't ask you too many specifics about this. I know you guys have a lot of muscles in your head and neck, and I try to just focus your notes on what I want you to know for those. Sternothyroid will go from the sternum to their thyroid cartilage. So a lot of the names of these muscles, sternohyoid goes from your sternum to your hyoid bone. The name of the muscle tells you where it's located. This is a cadaver view of those same muscles, so it's sometimes fun to look at a cadaver to remember to look at that. This is what we look like. We don't look like a drawing, but inside of us, this is what our muscles actually look like. These are the muscles and some of their actions. They work with depressing and elevating your hyoid bone, some of your mandible, so they'll be above and below your hyoid bone. Okay, then you have more neck muscles. I'm going to keep going back through this. Some of these lateral and posterior neck muscles, they arise from vertebrae or your thoracic cage and pectoral girdle. So they attach to your vertebrae in the back and they come up, or they attach to your pectoral girdle, your ribs, and they attach to your cranial bones. The big one that you should know, and I think number 5 might refer to this one, is your sternocleidomastoid muscle. So this is a large muscle. It has 3 points of attachment. So number 5 says which muscle has its inferior attachment on the manubrium and the sternal end of the clavicle, and its superior attachment on the mastoid process. You can see in this picture of this woman, her mastoid process, the big muscle that's going right behind her ear, that's the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So it attaches to her mastoid process and then goes down, and it will attach to the manubrium, but it also has an attachment on the clavicle. So that's sternocleidomastoid. So that's your answer to number 5 in your notes. And you guys can see that muscle if you, and you can feel it as well, because you can feel the two places of attachment on your manubrium, your clavicle, and then you can follow it up to your mastoid process. So that's the big one I want you to know from this picture. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? It's just weird talking to a screen.
You're doing great.
And you guys are so kind to me. Thank you. I wish we were just in person and you could laugh at my stupid jokes. Okay. More muscles. This is just showing that a lot of the muscles that originate from your vertebrae will attach to the back of your skull. So again, tons of muscles. What do I want you to know here? Sternocleidoid, mastoid, you can see it attaching to the mastoid process. Other ones I'm going to come back to in a second. Your levator scapulae muscle attaches to your scapula and helps you elevate your shoulder blades or your scapula. So again, muscles are a little bit easier to identify and remember their actions because a lot of their actions are in the name of the muscle itself. Okay, the erector spinae muscles, and this is something you should know, this is number 4. These are muscles that help determine your posture, so they will travel parallel with your vertebrae. Bilateral contraction extends your vertebral column, so helps you sit up straight, and unilateral contraction on one or the other side will flex your vertebral column towards one side or the other. They're organized into 3 groups of muscles, the iliocostalis, the longissimus, and the spinalis. So these are 3 groups of muscles. They're on either side of your vertebrae. So you have these 3 groups traveling alongside your vertebrae that help you stand and sit up straight. If we work our way from medial to lateral, like your notes say, the most medial group is the spinalis group, number 3 that's listed there. And the most lateral group is your iliocostalis group, and the longissimus is just the group in the middle. So these, again, are 3 groups of muscles that extend and travel parallel with your vertebrae. And I'll show you a picture of this in a second. So medial to lateral, they would go spinalis, longissimus, iliocostalis. A test question might ask you lateral to medial, in which case they would go iliocostalis, longissimus, spinalis. And I will show you a picture of this so it makes more sense in this picture. So here is your erector spinae group muscles in bold. And I know it might be hard to see, but the ones closest to your spine are the spinalis muscle group. So you can see how they run parallel with your vertebrae or your spine. So that's the easiest way to remember which one is most medial. The spinalis is next to your spine. And then working your way out, you have a longissimus and an iliocostalis group. You'll see the word costal in the iliocostalis group, and that has to do with your ribs. So this group of muscles will attach to your ribs. Okay? The transversospinalis are teeny tiny muscles that go between vertebrae. Quadratus lumborum is in the lumbar region, and that'll help flex and extend your vertebral column. Let's see if we can see the quadratus lumborum is more in the lumbar region down here, and that'll also flex and extend. So those are muscles in the vertebral column. Everyone got that for number 4? We're good with number 5?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
I just think this is a neat picture. It's looking at your vertebra and it shows the different muscles in between your vertebra. I won't ask you questions on what they're all named, but I just think it's fun for you guys to be aware that you have teeny tiny muscles in between your vertebra, helping your spinous processes to maintain aligned. The transverse processes, you have muscles between them. It's just kind of cool to look at, or cool for me, I don't know.
So during my car accident,
Yeah.
I think that are all inflamed, right? Because they're helping to protect your spine.
Yeah. So yours, even your muscles were probably stretched and misaligned too. I should show you, yeah. Erin was in a car accident, if you guys remember, in her spine. She had really bad whiplash, right?
Yeah, really bad. But my
Okay.
whole back, like 2 days later, 2 days after it happened, my whole back was completely swollen. Couldn't move.
Yikes. Oh, man. Does it still hurt you a lot too?
Not as much anymore,
Okay.
but it did hurt. I mean, they gave me Norcos for it, which I never took them, but
Yeah.
that's how much pain I was in.
Oh, man. Well, at least you're alive to tell about it, which I know you're in pain. I don't know if
Yes.
that's bad. Yeah. Okay. So this next couple of slides are muscles involved with inhalation and exhalation. And this is something where I do ask you, I don't know why I focus on this on your lecture exam. I must have thought it was important the first time I wrote this test, and I've kept them in there, but I ask you many questions about which muscles are involved in inhaling, taking in a breath, and exhaling, taking out a breath. So for 7 and 8, you can refer to this slide as to which muscles help to elevate your ribs and which ones help to depress the ribs. If a muscle helps to elevate your ribs, that means it's increasing your thoracic cavity. So whenever a muscle helps to elevate your ribs, that's inhaling, taking in a breath. And if it says a muscle depresses the ribs, that means the thoracic cage gets smaller and air is leaving. So elevating ribs has to do with inhaling, and depressing your ribs has to do with exhaling. So these are the different muscles that are associated with both of those that you guys need to be aware of. So we can put here the ones that help with inhalation are your serratus posterior superior, your scaling muscles, your external intercostals, which are muscles that go between your ribs, and then your diaphragm is a most important muscle that helps with inhalation. Your diaphragm actually pulls down, and when it pulls down, it decreases pressure in your thoracic cavity, so air just rushes in. So you should know the muscles involved with inhalation. You can write those down, and then the muscles involved in exhalation will all depress your ribs or get your thoracic cage smaller. So those would be your serratus posterior inferior, your internal intercostals, and then your transverse thoracis muscles. So I'm just gonna, make sure you guys are aware of this slide to help you answer 7 and 8. And just know there'll be several test questions on the muscles of inhalation and exhalation. The diaphragm, I see a chat here. We did answer 5. So 5 is sternocleidomastoid. And I'm just going to write that in the chat so you can see how to spell that. It sometimes is abbreviated SCM. And then number 6, we'll talk about number 6 in a little bit when we talk about your rectus abdominis muscle. Okay, so your diaphragm, let me go back, is the most important muscle for breathing. It's dome-shaped. So if you remember, normally it's shaped like this, like a dome. It has a central tendon. So its insertion point is on that central tendon. So number 9 asks you, what is the diaphragm? How is it important? And where is it insertion? The diaphragm is it's a dome-shaped muscle. It's a partition or a divider between your thorax, which is where your lungs are, and your stomach, which I'm not going to show you my stomach now, it's pretty big. But it inserts itself on the central tendon. So that just means the muscle itself comes together and it inserts itself on what we call the central tendon. So when that's the contraction of that muscle pulls the central tendon down and it enlarges your thorax and air rushes in. So that is what the diaphragm is, how it is important, and its insertion is on the central tendon. Diaphragm contraction is also important for other things. So when it asks for how it's important, you should know it's important for urinating, defecation, which is going number 2, childbirth, movement of venous blood. So just moving blood back to your heart, your diaphragm helps with that as well. Due to pressure changes, it helps to push blood back from your lower half of your body back up to your heart where it needs to be. So these are muscles of respiration that we talked about, where they're located. External and internal intercostals, they both are between the ribs and they go at angles to each other. So external intercostals, the striations look like that, and internal intercostals, the striations look like that, and then they just lie on top of each other. What else? We have scalene muscles attached to kind of your upper ribs up to your neck. Those are your scalenes. You can see the diaphragm, an inferior view of it. So if we're looking at the diaphragm from your abdominal cavity, you can see there's openings in it, and those openings are for just your aorta and your inferior vena cava to go back up to the heart. Okay, so these are muscles and then their actions all associated with respiration. And again, you should know these muscles and which ones elevate your ribs for inhalation and which ones depress your ribs for exhalation. Okay, so here I'm gonna try, so what is this machine? Does anyone know? Well, it's an iron lung. What did this have to do with? Does anyone have any idea?
It was meant for positive pressure or negative pressure, I think.
Yeah. So this iron lung machine, these were really common in, when was polio? Was it 30s, 40s, 50s? Someone's chatting, so I want to see if they, yep, polio. Yes, thanks, Brandon. So when, whoops, let me go back. So when there were no vaccinations for polio, what polio did was it paralyzed your diaphragm. So your diaphragm could no longer cause the inhalation or the thoracic cage to become larger. So without that, they came up with iron lung machines, which were really probably a godsend because they saved a lot of people's lives. So people would go in iron lung machines, and since their diaphragms weren't working, these iron lung machines would have a chamber that increased and decreased pressure of the thoracic cage, just allowing air to go in and out of the body. If you looked at the other side of this, you could see like a pump. So this would be connected electrically, but if for some reason electricity went out, you could do it manually with a pump, just increasing the pressure in the cage and then decreasing the pressure in the cage. So that's what polio did. It paralyzed the diaphragm. People could spend the rest of their lives in iron lungs. Maybe they could, some where it wasn't complete paralyzation, they would spend just a couple minutes in the iron lung. But there's just pictures of kids in these iron lung machines in hospital wards. And that's why we have vaccinations. So please vaccinate your kids. That link takes you to a video. It's just a minute long. Let me see if I can show it to you guys. See how this works. Can you guys see it at all?
No.
No. Yeah, maybe we won't.
I think you have to click share screen and it allows you to click which screen to share out of the
Oh,
link.
yes. Let me try this one. Can you guys, no, we're still in the Zoom meeting. I think I must have taken it off my Safari. Actually, let me pull something else up. Okay, let's try this. Do you guys see a Safari page now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does it say iron lung?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're gonna see if you get any volume. Do you hear anything? You
Yes.
do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Polio 1956. This is the way it looked. This is the way it sounded. You are listening to the breath of life as it is pumped by these tank respirators called iron lungs.
Tanny was in an iron lung. Mr. Balanchine stayed at the hospital with her. Even by the time we finished the tour in Stockholm and went back to New York City, he's still in Copenhagen with Tanny.
Why can't I be brave and strong? I'm so scared. I cried. I cry all the time. I can't stop feeling sorry for myself. I keep asking, why? Why me? Why polio?
Okay, so that's just a little video to show you kind of what the hospital wards looked like. Back to my PowerPoint now. Can everyone see my PowerPoint again?
Yes.
Okay, thanks guys. Okay, muscles of the abdominal wall. So there's like 3 sheets of muscles that hold your abdominal wall together. They hold your organs in place. Together they flex and stabilize your vertebral column. If they contract unilaterally, which means that they just contract on one side, they'll laterally flex your vertebral column. So they'll just flex you to one side. And if they flex together, they'll cause you to do a push-up. So flex this way on your vertebral column. You have external oblique muscles, internal oblique, transversus abdominis, and then the rectus abdominis. I don't have more notes, questions and notes about these muscles, but these are 4 muscles that you'll need, or 4 groups of muscles that you'll need to know for your lab study list. We'll start with the rectus abdominis muscle. The rectus abdominis is your 6-pack. So there's 2 groups of 4 muscles on either side. And the linea alba is a piece of dense fibrous connective tissue that connects the 2 kind of 4-packs together to make a 6-pack or an 8-pack or whatever. I don't know how many there are there, but it's, everyone has a 6-pack. I have good news for you tonight. It's just, you can see some people's better than others, but your rectus abdominis is the muscle that goes right down the center of the abdomen, and the linea alba is just a piece of dense fibrous connective tissue that just keeps them connected together. In pregnancy, like me, your rectus abdominis muscles actually split apart and go to the sides of your belly as you expand. It comes back together, kind of, not always. A lot of women have problems with their rectus abdominis coming back together. So you can sometimes feel a little like hole in between the 2 where your linea alba would be, where they haven't completely come back together. This also shows you the 3 then side layers of muscle. So right down the middle is your rectus abdominis. And then on the sides of the abdomen, you have 3 layers. And the 3 layers are your external oblique muscle, your internal oblique, and your transversus abdominis. And those are the 3 abdominal layers on the sides. Let me see if I can show you this kind of shows you a better picture of it, the cadaver view and the drawings of the external, well, no, that's intercostal. Here it is, external oblique, internal oblique, and the transversus abdominis. There's just 3 layers of abdominal muscles. And yeah, I don't have more questions about that on your notes, but you'll need to know those for the lab exam. Okay, so your external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus abdominis. Again, where it says unilateral action, that means it'll flex your vertebral column to one side or the other. If you're doing like a side crunch or a side sit-up. And bilateral flexion, if they both contract at the same time, they'll help you do a full sit-up or a full flexion of your vertebral column. The rectus abdominis just flexes your vertebral column and compresses your abdominal wall. So questions about your abdominal muscles? It's just so hard to do when we're not in class. I don't have like more models in front of me. Muscle actions of the axial skeleton. Here's a couple more. Is this the end of my slide? I think I'm almost done. Yeah. So I think this is the end of my slide. This gives you kind of just a basic summary of the actions of all the axial skeleton muscles. But I think we got through all your notes. So I'm just gonna stop the recording. If I can figure out how to do that. Questions?
Are you going to be putting pictures of like the drawings as well as the cadavers on there on the lab exam?
No, it'll just be like an artist's rendition, or it might be a picture of a model. But it would be a clear picture of a model. Good question.
Like a model, like how like the cadaver model?
No, never a cadaver model. Like possibly like a model you would find in a lab, like one of our plastic models. It would probably mostly be like an artist's rendition of it though.
And for the quiz, we just have to identify them, or do we need to identify with their actions?
No, just for the quiz on Thursday, it's just identifying the muscles. Yes.
Okay.
And I won't open that quiz until like 8 or maybe 9 p.m. on Thursday so that we have time to go through the chapter 12 appendicular muscle lecture too.
So the quiz will be basically after the lecture.
Yeah, so you can take it. I'll leave it open for 24 hours, but yeah, I'll open it. You can start taking it after we get done lecturing. Yeah. Yes. Good question. Other questions?
I got one. What's the linea alba composed of again?
Yeah.
The linea alba. Oops, let me go back. What is that?
You said dense regular, right? Or did I hear?
Yeah,
that?
it's a piece of connective tissue that just keeps your rectus abdominis muscles together.
Okay.
Yeah.